Today, we're going to talk about a really fresh way to tackle a super old problem. How do we make sense of messy, complicated audio? We're diving into a research paper on something called DM-ASR, and the big idea is to teach AI to have a structured dialogue with our recordings to untangle exactly who said what and when. So, have you ever been there? You're listening back to a recording, maybe from a big meeting or a group call, and it's just this jumble of voices talking over each other. You know the important info is buried in there somewhere, but trying to figure out who said that one brilliant idea is, well, it feels pretty much impossible. It's a universal headache, right? Well, it turns out that very human problem is also a massive technical challenge for artificial intelligence. The official term is multi-speaker automatic speech recognition, or ASR for short. And it's so much more than just turning speech into text. It's about becoming a master detective for conversations, untangling every overlapping sentence and correctly pinning every single word on the right person. All right, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to dig into why this is such a tough nut to crack. Then we'll introduce this brand new approach, DM-ASR. After that, we'll peek under the hood to see how it actually works, check out how it performs, and finally, we'll zoom out and talk about why this tech is, frankly, a pretty big deal. Okay, so let's jump right into the core issue, the messy conversation problem. What makes this so incredibly difficult for computers to handle? So, historically, there have been two main ways to go about this. Over on the left, you've got these cascaded systems. Think of it as a two-step process. First, one system tries to guess who spoke and when. Then it chops up the audio and sends those little bits to another system to transcribe. The big problem? If that first step makes even a tiny mistake, gets a timestamp wrong, or misses a speaker, that error just snowballs and completely messes up the final transcript. Then on the right, you have the big guns, unified end-to-end systems. These are these gigantic AI models that try to learn everything, who, what, and when, all in one go. It's a really promising idea, but man, it's so hard to pull off. It's super data hungry and usually requires these monstrous models with billions upon billions of parameters. And that brings us to the new approach from this paper, DM-ASR. The researchers behind it asked this brilliantly simple question. Instead of forcing the AI to figure out everything from scratch, what if we could just, ask it? So DM-ASR stands for Diarization-aware multi-speaker ASR, and its core idea is to completely reframe the problem. Instead of one giant, impossible task, it turns transcription into a simple back-and-forth dialogue. It takes the who spoke when info, which other tools are already pretty good at generating, and uses it to ask a large language model a series of super simple, targeted questions about the audio. This quote from the paper just nails the elegance of it. It decomposes the task. So think about it like this. Instead of asking the AI, hey, transcribe this entire hour-long chaotic meeting, you're asking, okay, what did speaker A say between the 0-second and 20-second mark? And then, got it. Now, what did speaker B say from 22 to 60 seconds? And you just keep going like that. And here, you can see what that dialogue actually looks like. It's so clean. In turn 1, the prompt is a direct instruction. Please transcribe the speech content of speaker SPKID 0 within the time segment time index 0 to time index 20. And boom, the model spits out just that specific piece of the puzzle. It's a focused, step-by-step process, which, it turns out, is a perfect job for a large language model. So how does this actually work? Let's pop the hood and take a closer look at the architecture to really understand how this conversation between the prompts and the AI gets going. Okay, now this diagram from the paper lays out the whole system. You can see the raw audio and the diarization labels going in on the left, getting processed, and then being fed into that large language model. Now, I know it looks a little complex at first glance, but the actual flow is surprisingly straightforward once you break it down. The whole thing really works in 4 simple steps. Step 1, the raw audio gets processed by a standard speech encoder. Step 2, a totally separate off-the-shelf tool figures out who spoke and when. Step 3, and this is the secret sauce, that who spoke when info is turned into a natural language prompt, just like the one we saw. And finally, step 4, the LLM takes that prompt, generates the text for that one little slice of the conversation, and then gets ready for the next question. Simple as that. But here's where it gets really clever. The researchers knew that the initial who spoke when info from step 2 might not be 100% perfect. So, while they were training the model, they intentionally fed it slightly messed up prompts, maybe a wrong speaker ID or a timestamp that's a little bit off. And what this does is it teaches the model not to just blindly follow instructions, but to actually listen to the audio and use the context to correct those initial errors. It builds robustness right into the system's DNA. It's so smart.
Okay, so the theory is elegant, the design is clever, but does it actually work? Let's get to the good stuff. Let's look at the results and see how DM-ASR stacks up against the competition.
The first number that jumps out is 1.7 billion. That's the parameter size of the bigger DM-ASR model. Now, I know that sounds like a huge number, but in the wild world of modern AI, that is actually pretty lean. Remember those giant unified models we talked about? Many of those are 7 billion parameters or even more. This right here suggests a much more efficient way of doing things. And that efficiency absolutely does not come at the cost of performance. Not even close. Just look at this chart. This shows the error rate on a really tough benchmark. And remember, lower is better. You can see the traditional cascaded system way up there with a high error rate. The big end-to-end models, they do better, for sure. But then look at DM-ASR. It blows them both away with the lowest error rate of them all. This thing isn't just competitive, it's straight up state-of-the-art. So here's the bottom line. What this all means is that you don't need a monstrous, resource-guzzling model to get incredible accuracy. This paper proves that by cleverly guiding a pretty standard LMM with existing tools, you can get world-class results in a much more practical and efficient package. Okay, so this brings us to the big picture. Why should we care about this beyond just cool research? What's the real-world impact here? Well, the potential applications are just huge. I mean, imagine getting perfect speaker-labeled meeting notes that are instantly searchable. Or think about call centers being able to analyze who said what for way better customer service. This could be a game changer for doctors needing accurate medical transcriptions, or journalists with hours of interviews. And it could power a whole new generation of accessibility tools for media. The list just goes on and on. You know, ultimately, what DM-ASR really proves is a powerful new way of thinking about building AI. Instead of trying to build one single monolithic model that has to do everything perfectly, a much smarter strategy might be to combine the focused strengths of specialized tools with the incredible reasoning power of LLMs. It's about collaboration and smarts, not just brute force. And that leaves us with a really fascinating question for the future. Is this smart, guided approach the best and most practical way forward? Or is this just a stepping stone, a bridge to an even more advanced future, where a single massive AI can finally learn to untangle our messy human conversations all on its own, with no help at all? It's something to think about. This breakdown was based on the fantastic work from researchers at Wuhan University, the Tencent Ethereal Audio Lab, and the Chinese University of Hong Kong. Thanks so much for tuning in.